Derek Stevenson. He's been working in telecoms for 30 years, 17 years in the health and safety space for businesses such as EE, Huawei, Ericsson, and undertaking rollout projects for 2G, 3G, 4G, fibre and data centre upgrades. Derek's going to be sharing some of his common pitfalls when undertaking telecom works in the Streetworks environment. And he's going to outline where the duty holder has particular responsibilities under Streetworks regs. So I'll pass over to Derek now.
And just to confirm, I have started recording this session now, so if any of you do want to change your names or turn your video off, that's absolutely fine, but just so you're aware.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So let me start my presentation. Share screen. Okay, so my presentation is around some of the common pitfalls when undertaking telecom works in the Streetworks environment. This is based in the UK, and it's essentially all the streets and the highways, etc., are essentially under ownership of either a local or under a local authority, stroke highways agency. And we have some legislation in that controls it, and namely the New Roads and Streetworks Act 1991. And there are duties that are placed upon duty holders and statutory undertakers to observe those regulations contained within that Act.
Sorry, Derek, so, you're not sharing your screen.
I am. Oh, I'm not. All right. Okay. It's definitely seeing it. All right. Try again. Stop sharing. Bear with me. That one. Try again. Guys, see that? No.
Yeah, we can see that. You just need to put it into presentation.
Yeah.
Spot on. Thank you.
Okay, so that ramble was on was around this first slide with it. So moving on to my second slide so this essentially shows what happens when statutory undertakers basically befoul the sections contained within the New Roads and Streetworks Act. Essentially, that there are prosecutions that occur under that said regulations, basically for failure to comply, and I've selected some here that have come from the essentially around telecom communication companies, showing like this, essentially where they've been prosecuted under, and also the size of the fines. So it does happen. These also contained in the Act is a provision for local highways agencies or local authorities to essentially issue fixed penalty notices for failure to address issues contained within essentially permits that are issued when we are doing works within the street work environment. And these are some examples of what they will essentially what a notice looks like, or sorry, FPNs look like, and whether and what they will issue them out to you through the portal. The interesting thing about this is, and under NASRA, There's section 65, which is basically, they call it safety measures. The two photos I show here are actually were taken, we're doing live works while delivering some telecom works. The first one on the left hand side, where we've got a street cabinet that's going to be deployed at a later date. Essentially, that actually would result in a section 65 notice and potential prosecution for it. That is an unsafe piece of apparatus that's been left, and actually is creating a hazard towards the general public. And essentially, what you guys need to be thinking about when doing these is if somebody who's impaired sight, etc., was then to sit there and come into contact with that said piece of apparatus and then suffer an injury, saying like you would be liable not only under the section 65 but also under under liability issues as well. This is why local authorities get rather upset, especially highways agency, the highways inspectors, when they actually go out and check on permits and actually seeing situations like this that occur. Next one as well, as a common occurrence, is unqualified staff working in the within the Streetworks. So there is a provision within the legislation. It essentially says that folk need to be qualified, and it actually details what that qualification is. As a minimum, most folk need to be, will have a unit 2, which is what they call a sign, lighting, garden piece. Essentially, it details how to set up a set of traffic lights, but those within the industry potentially think it's probably not fit for purpose because we don't set up traffic lights all the time. However, we do is set up streetworks. They potentially will be permitted, and they will incur some type of footway closure and or carriageway incursion with it. Section 70 is also an interesting piece because it's what they call it's a duty to reinstate, but it goes further than that because essentially what it talks about is the local authorities will be able to produce a fixed penalty notice because when you put your permit in, the actual description is not accurate enough. And I've given a couple of examples here whereby you're essentially saying that the works you're not doing are not in the verge, they actually are in the carriageway, or the works are not outside number 6 on that street, it's actually number 8 or number 10. So the point you need to be here is actually is your actual permit descriptions is an actual reflection of actually where you are working it itself. Also, there is another piece of guidance which is Hawk, and local authority inspectors will tend to use this when determining whether streetworks are safe when they go out and do their inspections with it. So this guidance actually provides useful advice for streetwork operations in the sense of setting up how reinstatements, etc. done, and also about managing your sites as well. Another piece of legislation, guidance that needs to be aware of is the specification for reinstatement. So contained within the new version of the Streetworks Act, there is provision in there for reinstatement, but it's this code of practice here essentially distills it out further. And there's an example here of whereby some telecom equipment was removed, and if you have a look at it, it says essentially section 9 talks about excavated materials as backfill needs to be an environmentally sustainable construction. Those large stones and spoil that are contained there as a result of when that works is finished is not in keeping with the local environment. Essentially what it means is that those are pieces of material that have been dug out from below and actually need to be removed before essentially you close your permit and saying it's satisfactory for to go back to be handed back to the local authority. In this, in this, sorry, under this provision, potentially you're liable for a fixed penalty notice with it. Section 74's the big one. So these are essentially where you have a permit, you book it, you rent it, essentially is what you're doing for a period of time. And then what happens is you then overstay that time period. So and these, so essentially what happens is the local authority will check up on your provision if you have overstayed. And when they talk about overstay, is actually your street works are still continuing after that permit date. There is paraphernalia, yeah. So you've packed away and you've collapsed your site, but your Streetworks site potentially at that location, they will deem it as an occupation of the highway and an extension. And this is where the fining system, the fines will then become astronomical. There have been section 74 fixed penalty notices of well over 60, 70, £100,000 been placed on civil utilities because of signage that has been left on site, been left at the location and folk have forgotten about it. So just, yeah, be aware of that. Footpath closures. So this in itself is where you've occupied the footpath. A lot of the local authorities don't tend to worry too much about that. But some may want a permit because there is an incursion into the carriageway, as shown here. Other local authorities don't. The provision here is that it needs to be set out correctly as per here. There needs to be a safe place for the person to, for folk to cross over. And that includes considering folk have young children, have disabilities, motorised scooters, etc. So when the footpath is closed, it means there should be good visibility for the pedestrians in order to sit there and see oncoming traffic so they can cross the road safely with it. Site setup. So in this instance, there's an example here where we've had an issue where a site has been set up, they've closed the footpath off, they have expecting the pedestrians to walk around here. However, there was an incident whereby a mobility scooter was went onto the grass verge and toppled over. So consideration when Streetworks of this type of nature is done is that there is sufficient hoarding that is put down that will actually prevent a mobility scooter from toppling or actually present other hazards, i.e. people can trip over them when they're done with it. It may be better actually to sit there and consider, can we sit there and move the footpath over or actually completely cover this first area anyhow with it as well. Gate guarding. So there's been some issues around this. Recently, telecom operators had an unfortunate incident whereby a toddler's entered a partially gated chamber, and the toddlers falling in. The actual operatives were up the next chamber, actually looking how to essentially do the works that they were planned to do. This is probably a pretty easy win, in the sense that the gate, you know, when guys are out working at 8, is the supervision pieces, is that they are actually leaving unattended chambers fully guarded. So there's some good examples here of gate guarding, and there's some sort of pretty poor ones as well that I have clocked when I've been out and about on the, you know, on our estate with it. Defects on existing telecom structure, infrastructure. So, and this is where yourselves potentially can report these in as an immediate defect. So this is one that was recorded. So what we've got here is the chamber lids are going to essentially going to fail if one more of those pins break, fractured. So this was reported into the asset owner, and they've got a 2-hour SLA to respond, in which they did. This essentially is, you know, we do need to sit there and actually, you know, be able to have a facility to do that, to report these, and that will go. So as me being an asset owner on our network infrastructure, we need to be, you know, have a mechanism so that the members of the general public or other contractors can report in failures on our network. So some examples. So we've got an example here of essentially an engineer who wants to do some fibre splicing. He wants to do it out of his back of his van. However, the network doesn't facilitate that. The actual splicing activity will take part in the chamber. The thing is that the operative hasn't moved his van off, and he's now causing a obstruction on the footway. The thing was with this was that essentially if the vehicle was moved, then the line of sight was then given for the pedestrians, and so the pedestrians then could, you know, essentially make an informed choice to sit there and cross the road when it was safe to do so with it. Example 2, telecom site. So what we've got here is essentially the width is good. However, the issue we've got here is that at the rear of the telecom site is that it's unguarded where the vehicle is. Essentially, you can have pedestrians, or more the cases, it's small children can enter the work area. In this instance, you know, there was opportunity for gate guarding to be put around the back of the work site, and I would probably implore it to sit there and say you want to sit there and make sure that your work sites are completely guarded. The other example, example 3 is probably a better one, where we've got some temporary lights in place. We've got the and what's happened here is that the pedestrians can enter the work site on the left hand side, where the streetwork barrier is actually not fully across to the wall. In this situation, actually the site setup was probably poor, because they should have actually put the pedestrians around out into the road. There was sufficient width in order to do that. What they actually did was they put the footpath closed and then expected people to cross over at that location. But however, there was a lot of parked cars on both sides of the road when they did so. And then another example where we got here is essentially we've got vehicles within the cordon. Don't necessarily know if those vehicles should be in that cordon when they've got the lift going on to sit and put that telecom monopole in. The interesting piece is the pedestrian management is not clear here. Actually, as you know, our pedestrians are going to be walking down to that site, because essentially it doesn't look clear if it does or not. But on the other side, there is, you showed definitely that the footpath is occupied. No footpath closure, sitting is out. So essentially, this is a very poor. This is a poor setup with it. And then the final one is just some operational advice. So, which is what I've going through for some of the common pitfalls, is essentially which I've listed here. And the one I probably would suggest one would look at is the third one down, is the safety at Streetworks and Roadworks, which is the Red Book, which is the code of practice for what we basically are, we do, and the Streetworks. That's it, finished.
Thanks for that, Derek. Okay, so our next speaker is Gary Flatley. He's currently the manager of SHEC compliance for a medium-sized business, reducing risk in working at height, road risk and general construction hazards. Gary will be talking about the online tool that was developed to help small works contractors while he was working with the utility strike avoidance group. So I'll pass over to Gary now. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, didn't realise you were doing an introduction there, so I'll skip mine. But basically, I'm a volunteer for the Broadcasting Telecoms Committee. I've worked obviously in Streetworks. I noticed on some of the roundups, some of my old colleagues there, sitting from the Yorkshire Branch in my water days, where I did quite a bit of Streetworks, worked on the electricity, chemicals, offshore and training sector. But yeah, certainly it's great, isn't it? We're working communications, and I have no idea what Derek's slides were all about, but thankfully I've not gone down that route of looking at the video nasties. But yeah, it'd be great if we sort of like, there's the irony with communications. So HSG 47, it's popped up as a question. I've been sort of having a bit of a conversation with one of the delegates, and it's long been a minimum standard for the avoidance of utilities, right back to the days when I was obviously working out there, certainly on the repair and maintenance side, which is very much a reactive element of utilities. One sort of bugbear I used to have when sitting in supply meetings was they'd hide behind this word emergency situation, and they would obviously go full scale ahead, the 3CX pecking away, sometimes no plans on site, very little attention paid to CAT and Jenny scanning, certainly no ground penetration radar with the reactive nature of it. And again, like I said, they hid behind this word emergency. And I always said, if you had, let's say, a clean water supply off for 2 hours, not in my knowledge, I don't think anybody's actually sort of died from dehydration. So anyway, you look into HSG 47, paragraph 71 to 75 certainly defines what an emergency situation is in utilities, and it's essentially where there's a risk to life or property, not necessarily just being off service for a couple of hours. Certainly, again, in my experience, consequential damage from doing excavations just seemed to be the cultural norm. It was an accepted practice, and they would fully expect to get the insurance claims coming in thereafter, or the invoices from other operators. I think a lot of work, certainly on sort of like mains rehab and that type of works, is done as piecework, so you're getting paid per meter. Derek's probably got a bit more knowledge than me on that, certainly on the telecom side, where you're putting like lots of linear mileage of new cabling, etc., and it's based on price per meter, so that the actual speed and swiftness can actually drive behaviour there as well. Churn of labour force is obviously a big issue in most industries really, and certainly the telecommunications industry. And when you've got an unstable workforce, you really do struggle to develop a strong culture, if you like. So in answer to Paul's question, really, or it's not really an answer, we'll come on to the answer. The rhetorical question is, does HSG 47 as a HSE guidance document go far enough? Bear in mind, it is a minimum standard. So I was involved a while ago, I'm going back to about 2008 to 2010, working with the Utility Strike Avoidance Group, and they sort of, it was a volunteer committee that come together to see what we can actually do about reducing cable strikes, utility strikes, and there's lots of information, and I'll share the link later, about why we are having these utility strikes after years and years of knowledge. You know, we're still managing to hit other people's apparatuses, and certainly sort of absence of safe plant. I know there is an adoption of things like air picks, vacuum excavation, etc., but still it isn't ubiquitous across utility companies. You know, we still do rely on the mini excavator and the grafter to get in there, and so to speak. Again, totally agree with one of our delegates, Paul. Plans are certainly not accurate. They're just a guide. They don't take into account for things like coil cables, meandering cables, pot-ended cables, that type of thing, or dead-end branches if we're talking about gas and water. Certainly you wouldn't use ground penetrating radar on R&M, but for planned works, like if you're talking about, say, mains rehabilitation, there's no reason why you couldn't actually use ground penetrating radar services to give you a better understanding of what is beneath the surface. I think there's just a general sort of reliance on the CAT itself as well. We've all seen it, you know, very, very rare do you see the two combined, the CAT and the Jenny on site. Oh, it just seems to be swing the CAT around like a handbag and then give it a go. And there is some data coming up regarding these down before you dig services as well, and certainly they can have an impact on reducing your cable strikes. Again, this is all USAG data, so there's an estimated 1.5 million kilometres of utility running around the UK. And again, based on opening notices, so approximately 12,000 new streetworks are started each day. Now, the 2,500 strikes are all these the USAG delegate volunteers who've signed up to the charter. It's all data that they've provided, but again, I'll come on to a powerful slide later which just shows you how strong this committee is. And in 2019, like I said, there was 2,500 strikes in that year. If you go to the USAG website, you know, there's a hell of a lot of information and data that dates back to 2013, I believe. And if you look at sort of, I don't know if my little laser pen's going to work on this, but if you look at this sort of information here, why is there a peak in July? An explanation there is longer hours, more daylight. Why is like a trough here in December? Certainly a lot of the utilities, not necessarily the R&M side, will remain on emergency call outs, but on the planned works, we tend to shut down for a couple of weeks, don't we? So that there is less excavation work going on, which could be an explanation. Here's a graph correlating to the applications for dial before you dig, and you can see there's some interesting trend there. So again, I urge you to go into the website and just get a good feel for what's actually going on there. This next slide, interestingly enough, 4/5 of all utility strikes occur in either the footway or the carriageway. And certainly when you look at the footway, it's more than a half of all utility strikes. That's a huge proportion. Okay, so NJUG 7, the diagram, The illustrious diagram that we all follow, don't we? Identifies how we should be laying utilities within a footway or a carriageway. But I think we're all sort of not naive enough to understand that it is a guide. It's not an accurate science, again, a bit like HSG 47. Does it go deep enough? Probably not. And I think the last slide really is more powerful than the previous slide, because there's just two things that really stand out in terms of strikes, and that's either the hand tools or the good old grafter. Dare I say it, some guys have still got some wrecking bars out there, or an excavator, a mini excavator, 3CX, etc., that type of thing. So 3/4 of all strikes are by them 2 pieces of equipment, the good old shovel or an excavator. So what did we decide to do as a volunteer group? We used to meet quarterly. There was a little trip down to the Energy Networks Association, who very kindly hosted all the meetings and still do. And so for about 3 years, we discussed what we were going to do. We sort of canvassed a lot of the main sort of utility companies out there. We canvassed a lot of the associations, the asset owners. The HSE had a seat at the table, and were also giving their opinion on what could be done. But essentially in 2012, April 2012, the Transport Minister at the time, Mr. Norman Baker, MP, launched this charter, Safe Dig Charter, for all the utilities to certainly adopt and agree to sign up to. We went a bit further, and when I said, does HSG 47 go deep enough, we looked at what else we could offer out there, not just for small and medium enterprises, but for best practice for your larger enterprises could actually adopt. And there is some real good guidance on that website, again, all free of charge, and it is there for anybody to use. We also sort of lobbied these industries and asked them, could they, just do one opening notice and get 2 or 3 jobs done in that period of time, and it seemed to work for a while. But I think it's kind of died off a little bit now. I think these utility companies are just going ahead with their own opening notice and then sort of rehabilitating it thereafter. One real powerful piece of work that has been done on this group is the utility strike reports, and they are compiled on an annual basis, and you can see just how far utility companies have come in terms of reducing strike rates. Some companies, some are actually performing better than others. Obviously the training bodies were involved, like the City and Guilds, the EUSRs, and there was actually a piece of work that they did where they wrote the best practice document for the EUSR assessment, which really delved into the use of the Cat and Jenny, the plans, etc. And it is a full-on assessment. So who are part of this group and who signed up to the charter? Well, just that slide there alone is quite a powerful slide. So when you look at associations, we've got our own association, which is IOSH, who've endorsed this Safe Dig Charter. From a contractor's point of view, if you're not on there, you're not in it. And by the way, that bottom left-hand visual, I could put another 2,000 logos on there for people who've signed up to this charter, so you can appreciate that it's quite a serious sort of noise in the utility sector. All the asset owners, your Yorkshire Water, Southern Water, Railcross, E.ON, etc., have all signed up to the charter, as have the service providers, so things like ground penetrating radar companies, your training companies, your Atkins of the world, that sort of thing. Moving on to the toolkit, what's it about? There's a lot of information in there. you can either use it as best practice if you've already got established management systems, or you could pull the whole thing off, rebadge it as yourself if you're a small you know, contractor, and all of a sudden you've got a management system ready to go. So in the design and planning stages, it's a series of flow charts which you can sort of put to practice. The responsibilities, again, there's a checklist in there, but it's basically a flow chart process. It talks about underground avoidance training, and again, there's a best practice document within there. And the foreman info certainly sort of looks at things like a gang pack. What would a foreman be expected to do? Some companies may call them supervisors, but essentially it is a full suite of management system processes. The good old PPE registers and toolbox totes, a good selection of toolbox totes is in there. And what they did, they pulled together a lot of the utility companies' utility strike forms, and cherry picked all the best bits from the forms and created this one super form, if you like, which helps with the root cause analysis of why the utility strike occurred, and obviously what the plans are thereafter to avoid reoccurrence. I'm not really going to go into any depth any further on this slide, but you know, the toolkit does also offer up other information like strike damage reports, the safety charter, which is there for any utility company to sign up to, whatever size you are, small, medium, large enterprise. There's a hell of a lot of historical safety alerts gone on there, looking at root causes and how to avoid them moving forwards. A very large library of free video information on everything from safe use of Cat and Jenny to safety at Streetworks, that type of thing. And a hell of a lot of reference guides such as HSG 47 and PAS 128, them type of documents. So again, I think Sam at the start said this will be available on the website, but if you want to make a note of where I'm trying to steer you towards is www.utilitystrikeavoidancegroup.org, and it'll open up the page and you can have a look around that and see for yourself. I'm not on commission, by the way. This is my penultimate slide, really, and you know, when we're talking about things like electricity strikes, water strikes, telecommunication strikes, gas strikes, they'll all have their own different ways how they can be catastrophic, but certainly you can appreciate this one was this picture is quite a powerful picture of a gas strike. And quite recently over in Haitian, the details are still unknown as to what the root cause of that gas explosion was, but certainly you can see what damage gas can do when it is obviously when we can ignite it, if you like. I think a 2-year-old boy died in that recent gas explosion, and there's 2 seriously hurt. I think the police are still saying it's a complex investigation, so we're still none the wiser as to why it's occurred. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me now, folks. I suppose in summary, I just wanted to make you guys aware, if you wasn't already aware, that there's a whole host of information available free of charge, and there's been a lot of time, effort and money put into the USAG group to develop this safety charter, to get parliamentary ascension, HSE and IOSH backing amongst others, and to develop this toolkit, which is there either to adopt into your own business, or if you've got mature management systems, certainly look at the best practice documents and what you should be doing. So that's it. Thanks for listening. Happy to take any questions either in this webinar or after. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. So our final speaker is Ian, and he's got experience of working in the telecommunications and utility sectors with focus on sales, business development and commercial functions. Ian joined a company called Geist in February 2019, to develop and grow their services in these sectors. He's going to be sharing with us how they can help improve the safety of Streetworks projects through highways intelligence. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for the invitation to present to you all today. Slightly different tack from the two previous speakers in that I'm going to show you some innovations that we're bringing to the sector, particularly around planning, design and execution of utility works and telecom works. But as an addition to that, we can demonstrate how we can improve safety and reduce accidents and the like as a consequence of what we're doing. So a slightly different tacking. It's more of a pitch rather than a sort of a demonstration of specification. So hopefully you can all see the slides. Can you see that, Sam? Can everybody see that?
Yeah, we can see that.
Thank you. Right. So just to sort of put it into context, or sort of set the scene of what we're trying to achieve. So any works in the highway or street works can incur unnecessary costs, delays and variations if the surface material and existing specification, existing condition is not understood and accounted for at design stages. So effectively we're offering a solution to plan works more effectively in greater detail and at reduced cost. The recent edition of the SROH, the 4th edition, has a requirement in there for undertakers to assess the existing condition of footways and to agree, and where they're in poor condition, to agree with local authorities what the solution is to remedy that. And we're working with a number of undertakers and councils to bring some cost savings there, which I can elaborate on a little bit later. And capturing that data through site surveys is slow, expensive, open to subjectivity, and more importantly for this forum, can lead to safety implications of surveyors walking the public highway, both security and the like, on the busy public highway, both to the personnel carrying out the surveys and the general public in general. So what we're proposing and what we're delivering to the sector is up to a 75% reduction in the need for walking surveys, reducing surprises when you're on site, both from an operational and commercial standpoint, and as I say, improving health and safety along the way, and not least during the recent times, what we've been able to bring to clients is mitigation of COVID-19 restrictions through remote working and virtual walkthroughs, which I will show as we go through. So that's kind of sort of setting the scene really. So just to explain a little bit about what we do using this graphic, it's an oversimplified version of what we actually do, but effectively we, through our vision pillars of service here, we drive entire highway networks up and down every street, capturing high definition imagery every 900mm from multiple views that we stitch together then in a form of video. And then through processes of artificial intelligence, machine learning and some human inspection, we extract data sets from that imagery for use by mainly local authorities, the highway teams in local authorities, but also utility and telecoms clients. And as the third pillar to our services, we also then take our data and provide life cycle modelling plans and things like that, but that's mainly for the local authority sector. So that's effectively what we do. It's capturing the imagery, of the entire roadscape at a moment in time in great detail that we can then refer to again and again and again as required, say to extract data sets or for use in live projects. So this graphic here really shows how we're adding value to particularly fibre to the home, sector. So if you've got a rollout mainly via PIA, we have a data set that provides pole information and span data. And if you're doing self-build or self-dig, then the data is our fibre route data is of where you're going to be putting the trenches. So planning and high level design stages, you can assess optimal route, improve cost forecasting, and have a more accurate business case, all without the need for visiting site. Then at detailed design stage, you've got more usable information, again without the need for site surveys. You have entire route data, so it's every square metre of the working environment, not just sample batches. And as a consequence, you get far more detailed scope of works and bill of quantities. As I say, we do that by extracting that data from imagery, but operations and safety teams can have access to that imagery almost as a free value add throughout the life of the project. So for things like doing desktop reviews of safety, special engineering difficulties, traffic management requirements, more information that's included in RAMS and CDM 2015 documentation, and then after the works are done for management and verification of warranty claims. So that's kind of where the sort of safety element comes into it afterwards, as well as a little bit as a free value add of the data that we provide. So what does that look like? These are sort of screenshots really of I mean, the data is really alive and dynamic, and obviously specific to each location. It's a GIS-based system, but this is just to say a screenshot of what it actually looks like, just to give you a perspective. So this is the pole data. So we can capture through our surveys far more detail, a volume of detail, an accuracy of detail that is available than from walk surveys. So we capture more information than is available without the cost of it. So things like the heights of the poles, location, condition, ground conditions, the heights of the poles, but we're also able to capture where the spans, either that's pole to pole and pole to property, and we do that by triangulating the imagery, so we can determine span lengths. Again, this is information that is not available from a physical survey, so not only are you getting the more information, you're saving the cost, time and safety implications of a walk survey on the street. And then probably more relevant to this group is the sort of route plan data that we provide. This is similar to the information that we provide to local authorities. So we work with about 60 or so highway authorities in the UK, providing them their annual inspections for their road and footway condition, for their maintenance plans and safety inspections, etc. But this is the kind of data that we provide to fibre operators. So you can see by this graphic that we cover every square metre of footway. We're identifying its material type, we're identifying its condition. And you see that the box on the right there is an example of some of the data that we, as an extract of the data. So it's area, length, width, to 3 decimal places, its grade, material. And that's for that little box that's highlighted there in red. But as I say, we cover every square metre without the need for a walked survey, because with all of our data, you have a link back to the source imagery for validation. And if you want to, again, just talk about mitigating and reducing site surveys, because we cover every street in an area, you can see in the top left-hand corner there, that's really good condition. You probably don't need to visit sites there, whereas in the bottom right, the footways are in a poorer condition and may need perhaps a bit more attention. So yeah, allocating resources in the right way. And if anybody can recognise where this is, it's Swadlincote in Derbyshire. If anybody can recognise the streets they're on. As I said previously, with all of our data, you've got a link back to the source imagery, so you can check out the environment, check out traffic management requirements, quality, the working environment without the need to leave your office. The quality of the imagery is 900 times better than Google Earth. This is kind of a snapshot of what it looks like. So if anybody recognises this is York. So anything that's outside of the green is Google Earth. So we use Google Earth as this kind of platform. Everything inside the green is our imagery that we've captured from the vehicles. So as it zooms in, you'll see the kind of level of resolution that is achievable. Again, from the desktop without having to leave your office. There's a bit more to that, but I'll kind of move on. So as a case study, talking about reducing surveys, this is a project we did for one of the major fibre rollout operators. We're doing some work. They initially tried our services in a small project in Dewsbury. So we did provide data for a small section of 4 kilometres of network covering 451 homes. the use of our data and imagery demonstrated that they could reduce 6 man days from the walked out process and the ECI process. So again, not only a cost and time saving, there's a safety element to that in saving the safety implications of sending guys to site. The consequence in more detailed scope of works and bill of quantities, bill of VOQs, therefore minimising potential for variations and aborts. And just to re-emphasise again, all of the data comes with access or free access to the supporting imagery. And just, you know, as an example, because we do it bespoke to a client's requirements, it's all bang up to date and current. And the Google Street View imagery for that particular area was more than 12 years old. So, you know, a lot of things can happen within 12 years. Again, that's just kind of an example. This is an example of how it was overlaid into their sort of CAD drawings. So not only did they have the physical route data on site, so the red line drawing of where the fibre to go, we could overlay a layer into the CAD drawing or through a GIS platform of the footway condition, surface material and other issues that can be interrogated. And as again, just to get mentioned that the safety side of it, access to the HD images for every polygon as either as an individual image or a video stream to do so you can do a virtual walkthrough with contractors and whatever, you know, say from the desktop remotely. So just a quick summary of the benefits, particularly as relation to safety. So as I said, we can negate the need for traditional walk survey methods. We've proved that we can reduce them by up to 75% in most cases. For risk assessments and construction phase health and safety plans, you know, we're covering every square metre with far more detail than is available from a manual survey. So these documents contain more detail with a greater accuracy. So, you know, the more information that's provided in a safety documentation, the less likely there's going to be incidents on site. And an example of that, I'm aware of a contractor that went to change a telegraph pole. The information on the pole was wrong that was given to him by the customer and obviously their team. They thought it was on a footway, and when they got there, eventually in a field, used the wrong equipment and there was an accident and the pole fell over. So having incorrect information on the working environment can lead to problems. Again, just to re-emphasize that use of the data has been invaluable to a number of clients during the pandemic, where we've all been stuck at home in lockdown and those travel restrictions. Projects were unable to be executed by using the remote data and access to the supporting imagery. And I mentioned talk about warranty claims and quality issues. So if you get a query on the quality of the reinstatement, management of that claim and validation of it can be done more efficiently, because every single image is time and date stamped and location specific. So there's no arguments about you know, what it was like. Just a slide of logos really. These are just some of the local authorities and private companies that we're working with. As I say, we work for about 60 or so local authorities every year. We drive something like 200,000 kilometres of highway network every year. We work for a number of private organisations, so City Fibre, like Virgin, Gigaclear and others we've done work for. We do work for the Department for Transport. We've done an assessment of the quality of white lines, getting ready for autonomous vehicles and the like. So this is not a theory. This technology is being used already, and clients are seeing the benefits of it. Again, yes, some references. So City Fibre have used us from day one. We won an Inc Gold Award in 2019 for innovation, and we were recognised by the House of Commons Transport Select Committee with a quote in their report in 2019 again that we're bringing innovation to the sector. Those are my contact details. I'm happy to take any questions now or through the chat, or if you want anything more specific information, please take down these details and drop me a line or give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, and thanks to all of our speakers. That's been really informative today. I don't know if anybody's got any questions they want to ask. I know Paul has mentioned he'd like to speak about utilities in the footpath.
Basically, I mean, my company is a utilities infrastructure provider, and we put gas and electric in the ground and water as well. And often when we're excavating in any situation, the stat plans are incorrect. We do trial holes, we do cat and jenny. We've got all the situation organised, and still, you know, we'll damage some utilities. So it's very annoying from our point of view. And when you go back to the networks, they hide behind HSG 47, which is frustrating. But you know, initially they're not laid properly, and they're not marked up properly. There's no marker tape. There's nothing there. We often find with street light cables, they run all over the place, zigzag up pavements, and they're coiled up. And often they're only 50mm below ground surface. It's an absolute nightmare for us. But one of the other things I wanted to pick up on was on one of Gary's slides, he was saying that around about 50% of damages are in footpaths. And the reason behind that is, you know, we design to put utilities in the ground. And what happens is the client will ask us to give a quote for a price. We can price it in the footpath or price it in the road. An obvious one is the cheapest one is to reinstate as a footpath. So the tendency is to go that way. And if you look at CDM, for instance, construction design management, you're supposed to design out the risk. Yet we'll put people at risk by putting them in the footpath where HV cables are, gas facilities are there. So it's a tricky business. And to be honest, it's been excellent to listen to these guys speaking. They've come across really well and explained what happens, because often people go out and see that the streets are all cordoned off and dug up and play all about utilities. But there's an hell of a lot of information there and what's involved in doing it. It's not just a case of turning up with some barriers one day. You've got to get all your notices in place, all your start plans in place. And it's quite a complex industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Does anybody have any questions for any of our speakers? Because there hasn't been anything in the chat to ask. No. Well, I was going to ask Ian actually. You mentioned about using the Google Earth mapping and overlaying your own imagery. What do you do when you go to an area, say a new build area, where there's it's not on Google Earth?
So we don't use Google Earth at all. That was just a way of demonstrating the level of resolution to what we offer compared to Google Earth. So all our imagery is captured bespoke. So yeah, we do it on instruction. So if it was a new build estate or it's added to the Highway Authorities network, then it would be captured as part of the annual inspections.
Okay, makes sense. Anybody else? Does anyone want to ask anything?
I think Sam, I think these guys have explained it that well. There's nobody asking any questions.
Everyone's taken everything they need from it. That's early finish then, guys. Well, thanks again to the speakers. I'll just recap on what I said at the beginning for those who may have missed it. We have in June a meeting about building safety and technology, looking at BIM, and I did mention we struggled with getting speakers. So if, somebody wants a question, I'll just finish this bit. Yeah, if anybody is interested in speaking for us about that, then please let us know.
Yeah, I would like to actually ask a question regarding Streetworks. I mean, in addition to the reference which is mentioned, like, I mean, SHROH or something like that, is there any other reference that, I mean, health and safety professionals should consult, I mean, regarding that work? And then second part of the question is, I mean, how important it is for, I can say, these works to be informed to road users. and how these, I mean, works are informed to the road users.
Does anybody want to answer that one?
Yeah, so there is other information out there. HSG, as we've discussed already during these series of slides, is a minimum standard. You can go beyond that. There's the PAS 128 document, or there's a series of PAS documents that go into more detail, which would be regarded as best practice. There's also the NJUG standard as well, which looks at how Streetworks should be installed, and it was interesting to get Paul's take on that. And yeah, it is a shame how it does come down to cost, because it costs less material and less manpower and labour resources to reinstate a footway as opposed to what it does you know, the carriageway. And also there's the disruption of you know, the carriageway as well. So yeah, there's a lot of information out there. There's the Hawk standard as well in terms of reinstating, but you can also go down the assessment route and look at what the USAG did with the it's not, I wouldn't say the rewriting, but certainly influencing them to make their assessment on cable avoidance detection and the assessment a lot more rigorous, if you like, as opposed to what it was. So I hope that maybe answers your question there, Mirza. I think we can put some links on, Sam, can't we? You know, when we finish this, we can maybe put some direct links to websites and what have you.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, second part was actually about how we can inform the road users about any work which is in progress. I mean, is there any guideline or is there any mechanism that we can use to inform the road users?
I'll let Derek answer that one maybe. But there is obviously the permitting. It is a legal requirement. You've got to apply for these permits, and then obviously there's the display boards. I think what modern technology, modern streetwork furniture, they're using graphics now on these street signs that are explaining upcoming works and the likes. Derek, I don't know if you've got any more information on how they can sort of interface with the public in terms of this sort of streetworks topic.
I think that will essentially lie with the local authority highways agency and how they want to manage their highway sort of portfolio. Essentially, because they could have numerous amounts of works going on with utilities within their domain, and trying to get that information out to road users potentially could be problematic. I don't know, because I can't essentially comment on it. The only things I think we do see, I think for us as everyday users, is obviously on the national the national motorways, and obviously see what the guys do on the highways there, and essentially, you know, forewarning us with information about road closures or due to roadworks, etc., going on, you know, where that happens. The bit around, I think, just going to go back to your first question where you asked for some information around some safety, you know, some resources around safety out on the street. I'm going to put something up. This little fella, if you can see it, go that way. Yeah, it probably should be your Bible, the one that you should have about you when you absolutely are deploying Streetworks, actually in the footway or the carriageway. That should be your first point of reference for it as well. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So I'd just like to expand on it a little bit in terms of, you mentioned about informing the road user, but there's a piece of work going on, or increasingly going on. We're part of the DCMS barrier busting team, and one of the key issues, and that was coordination of works. There was often complaints from the public that the council would repair the road, repair the footway, and then a utility company comes along and then digs it up again. So we're finding that using the services that we provide to local authorities and then to utility operators, they can combine that data to align programs. So, for example, there's a project going on with a client in the northwest where they are going at some point going to resurface the footways in an area, and they've encouraged they're now aware of plans for utility companies to go down that footway. So they're aligning that program, saving the costs and sharing the resurfacing costs, for example. So there are ways and means of using the information and data that's available to coordinate the works and to minimise that disruption and save cost and disruption and environmental damage all round.
Just to add on to that, there is provision in the new Roads and Streetworks Act to do that. We call it a Section 58 notice. And it's essentially, it'll call all utility companies to, got any plans within a geographical area, then you need to put a provision in for that, for whatever plans you've got, because as soon as a Section 58 notice is served, there will be no utility works on that piece of geographical area, i.e. highway or for a period of time. So utility companies, and especially like telcos, we are constantly monitoring for Section 58 notices within our build region.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I think Alex has got a question as well. If you want to unmute yourself, you can ask it. You should be able to do that now.
Oh, thanks, Samantha. Yeah, sorry, got a frog in my throat. Just when you kind of, small telecoms business, just want to do some like basic maintenance on a street site, so that they're going and basically opening a cabinet, but they're not really doing extensive work. Is there sort of some best practice around that that's, simple, practical? I know the red book looks really good. I'm just thinking just any kind of guidance on that, where it's really, you're not breaking open the road, you're just literally accessing that telecoms cabinet.
So you mentioned the red book, but it is again a code of practice, and you should be following it. You can go beyond that and look at things like extended signage. You can think of things like extending your lighting for obviously twilight hours, etc. But yeah, the red book does identify that you've got to leave this. I think it's 1500 mil as a minimum, but they would accept up to 1000 mil before you have to start doing other things, because that may well take it away from pedestrian management to more traffic management with a temporary footway in the road. So at this moment in time, I can't really think of any other document other than the red book. We do have our own internal process, and we do have our own signage that we use. You do see it every day. You'll see, people opening, and it's back to CDM again, and the doors opening out onto the pavement as opposed to they could open up on the grass verge side. But you'll see guys just rock up. They'll put high vis on, turn into a back cape so it makes them bulletproof, and then off they go. But there's often a disregard for your tap and toe. Your blind person walking down, your mother or father with a pram or whatever, and they're just horror stories waiting to happen, really. I think best endeavours, Alex, to be honest, and providing you're following the red book, and if you've gone beyond the red book and put more signage out, etc., then I think you're going to be okay. Just bear in mind, you can't just sort of rock up to any pavement as well and start creating barriers. You will still need to notify the local authorities that that's what you intend to do.
Yeah, I just I know the Masts and Towers group for telecoms. I haven't looked, whether they've referred any documents in their suite of kind of best practice. It was just for the mobile phone industry. Obviously, I'm sharing that I don't. Obviously, the red book definitely goes to that, new Roads and Streetworks, but effectively, I thought maybe there might be some document out there that I've not seen yet. So, but thanks, Gav. Appreciate it.
No problem. I mean, like, you know, I said from the outset, I'm in telecommunications, and I'm pretty certain the masts and towers don't go into any detail regarding Streetworks. I know that MB&L, CTIL have their own processes for working at Streetworks, but it invariably refers you back to the code of practice, a red book.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you want to do a little bit more, then I think, you know, the more visible you can make that site, the better. Provided you're not creating your own hazards, like putting stuff in the way. More signage, yeah, clean IVs, that type of thing, apology boards, etc. Then, yeah, you're following the minimum standards, so you'll be fine.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex, thanks.
Everyone, if you need to ask a question, I didn't realise the first time I said that no one could unmute themselves, but we've changed that now. So if anyone wants to have a go at asking a question, you can do that. Just at the side here. Wonderful information. We also have small projects on multiple highways to install toll gates, and they will be also connected to SOC. And it is also a concern that road lanes might need to be closed as it is working at height on highways. That's from Mercer again. There's no question with that. Is there anybody else? We're all good.
I mean, can I ask a question relevant to that thing that I put in chat room? Can I go ahead, Samantha?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So I mean, the thing is, I mean, is there any limit on the duration that, I mean, if we are closing any lanes on highways for the installation of the toll gates, as, I mean, the projects might not, I mean, last longer, but you can say as it's working at height, and then heavy traffic on those highways might be impacted. And if we will not close the lanes, so there's a chance that, I mean, falling objects and the fast moving vehicles might cause some incidents. So I mean, is there any, I mean, like a minimum or maximum duration that we can close any lane?
I think that would probably depend on the local rules and what the permit allows, but whereabouts are you working? I feel like we might have lost him.
Yeah, I think he's been disconnected. I can't find him on here.
Yeah. Just sort of like finishing off then. The rule is whatever your permit states that you've got on the duration. So, and as you said, Sam, you know, local authorities have, you know, their own sort of timeframes on when you can and can't work on Streetworks, or even if it's traffic sensitive, you know, then they'll obviously be a bit more restrictive. But in terms of the working at height element and falling objects, that's pretty standard risk assessment, isn't it? And drop zone theories and tethering and all the rest of it, keeping people out that area. So yeah, risk assessment as everything. We'll see you clear of any incidents, I suppose.
I'll just add to that one, Sam. By the sound of Mercer's question there, it sounds like a lane closure, so it needs to organise that through a local authority anyway. And that would give a duration. As discussed there, it might be time sensitive, it might have operating hours, it all depends.
Yeah, I would actually say you need to define what your working location is. Is it local authority or is it highways agency? Because they got two different sets of obligations placed upon you as the contractor doing that installation work with it.
I'll see if we can pick that up with him outside of this, if he's been disconnected, if he needs any more answers. Any more? No? Well, in that case, I'll bring it to an end. Thank you all for to the speakers for speaking, sharing your information with us, and thank you to everybody for giving up your time today to come and listen and join the Yorkshire branch and the Broadcast and Telecommunications branch group. And we'll see you all at the next event, which is in June. So thank you.